My name is Alexandra Vance, but you can call me Alex. I'm 33, and I am, or rather was, the operational architect of Vance Couture. At our annual year-end gala in our glittering Meridian headquarters, with over 200 employees watching, my sister, the CEO, stepped up to the microphone. Her name is Victoria, and she'd always loved a spotlight. She apologized to her boyfriend, our sales director Leo, for the supposed criticism he'd endured. Criticism I had delivered. His disastrous online promotion had nearly cost us our most important clients, and I had been the one to state the cold, hard facts. Now, in front of everyone, I refused to offer a groveling apology. Victoria's eyes, which looked so much like mine but held none of the same warmth, narrowed into slits. "You're suspended until you do," she announced, her voice like a shard of ice cutting through the expectant hush of the crowd. My parents, standing right beside her, their faces masks of cold approval, smirked. "Know your place," they said, their voices in perfect chilling unison. The room, after a heartbeat of shock, erupted, not in sympathy but in laughter. Her loyalists, the sycophants she surrounded herself with, cheered her on. I felt a sick, twisting knot form in the pit of my stomach, but I held my ground, my spine rigid. Every single eye in that ballroom was fixed on me, waiting for me to shatter, to cry, or to surrender. Instead, I locked my gaze with hers. "Fine," I said, my voice perfectly steady, carrying across the room. Then I turned and walked towards the grand exit. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea, their whispers and jeers trailing behind me like the train of a funeral gown. I didn't look back. My sister thought she'd finally won, humiliating me in the heart of the empire our family had built. My parents thought I'd come crawling back, broken and begging. They were all wrong. I had personally built the intricate digital nervous system that kept this company alive, and I was far from finished. Something was coming, something they had orchestrated, but would never, ever see coming. If you've ever felt the unique sting of being stabbed in the back by your own blood, you know exactly what this feels like. Share your story in the comments. Have you ever had to face down a family that turned on you? And please hit that like button if you're on my side. You'll want to stick around for this. Because what I just described, that was only the beginning. 5 years ago, I poured every ounce of my being into building Vance Couture from a single, hopeful boutique. My name is Alex Vance, and at 28, I had this grand vision of a family dynasty that could dominate Meridian's fiercely competitive retail landscape. My older sister, Victoria Vance, 5 years my senior, was crowned CEO. She was a force of nature, her ambition a gleaming, double-edged sword. It sliced through business obstacles with ease, but it also had a nasty habit of rewarding those who flattered her and cutting down anyone who didn't. I was the one behind the curtain. I designed and coded our proprietary online ordering system, a digital lifeline that allowed our little boutique to compete with massive national chains. It wasn't just software, it was the company's central nervous system. It tracked every piece of inventory, streamlined shipping logistics down to the minute, and cultivated a customer experience that kept people coming back. That system was my blood, sweat, and tears, coded through countless sleepless nights, all to make the Vance name mean something more than just another label. But Victoria was always the one who saw the spotlight, not the scaffolding that held it up. She thrived on control, on making her decisions final even when those decisions flew in the face of the very data I provided. Our parents, Eleanor and Richard Vance, held the company's purse strings. Mom and Dad were obsessed with profits, not process. They adored Victoria's flair for closing deals and her charismatic presentations. They would give my detailed logistical reports a cursory nod, but would save their roaring applause for her. For a while, I didn't mind. We were a team, a family, or so I naively thought. Then, her boyfriend, Leo Kane, waltzed into our lives. Victoria hired him as our new sales director, a position he was profoundly unequipped to handle. Sure, He had a salesman's charm, a dazzling smile, and a firm handshake, but he had zero grasp of the complex realities of retail logistics. His appointment wasn't a strategic move for the company, it was a move of her heart. I found myself leaning more and more on my assistant, Maya Flores. She'd been with me since the days of that first store, a quiet but fiercely intelligent woman who was more loyal to me than to the company name. She saw the details I sometimes missed in my exhaustion, and she saw the writing on the wall with Leo. Early on, she warned me, her voice low and urgent, that Leo's flashy, surface-level ideas were designed to outshine my steady, reliable systems. I brushed it off. I trusted my sister. I trusted our family bond, but the cracks were already forming. Victoria began to bypass me in major strategic meetings. Leo, her new protege, would pitch half-baked marketing plans that completely ignored my inventory data and logistical constraints, and Mom and Dad, captivated by his empty promises of explosive growth, backed them every time. I felt a sense of claustrophobia setting in, my own role shrinking within the very empire I had architected. The more our company grew, the more I sensed a fundamental shift. Victoria's decisions started to blatantly favor her own inner circle, and Leo's presence tilted the delicate balance of power. He'd stroll into my office, toss out half-formed suggestions that were just watered-down versions of my own proposals, and then, in the next executive meeting, claim them as his brilliant, original insights. I had spent years meticulously perfecting our supply chain, but my voice was being systematically faded into the background. Maya saw it all. Her quiet, knowing glances from across the conference table were a silent urging for me to push back, to fight for my place. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I kept my head down, telling myself that the work would speak for itself. I continued tweaking the system, refining the code, ensuring orders flowed seamlessly despite the chaos Leo was creating. But with every ignored email, with every idea of mine that was sidelined in favor of one of his, a tight, painful knot formed in my chest. My sister wasn't just leading the company anymore. She was aggressively reshaping our shared legacy to fit her own self-serving vision. Leo's influence grew like a weed, his confidence completely unchecked. He would pitch one bold, reckless campaign after another, promising exponential growth, while I was left to scramble, patching up the logistical holes to make his fantasies even remotely feasible. Victoria ate it up, her trust in him so absolute it was blinding her to his glaring incompetence. And my parents, utterly dazzled by his charisma, began to question my methods. "Why can't you be more like him, Alex? More forward-thinking?" my father once asked, his tone sharp with disappointment. I swallowed the bitter reply that formed on my tongue, but the sting of his words lingered for days. Maya caught me after that conversation, her voice a low murmur in the hallway. "They're not seeing you, Alex. Don't let them erase you." Her words were the spark that lit a fire in the fog of my confusion. I started to notice the patterns more clearly. Victoria's decisions were no longer just influenced by Leo. They were entirely dependent on his input, even when my data screamed that his gut feelings were risking our bottom line. She would override my explicit warnings about overstocking certain items, trusting his market sense over my hard numbers. And Mom and Dad just nodded along, their faith in her judgment absolute. I wasn't invisible, but I was being treated as if I were expendable. The very system I'd built was the only thing keeping the company afloat, yet my role felt increasingly ornamental. I'd walk through our flagship store, seeing the racks brimming with designs we had once fought side by side to launch, and I'd wonder if I had become a ghost in my own dream. That tension simmered, my loyalty tested daily. I still believed in Vance Couture, in the family we had once promised to be. But Leo's relentless opportunism, Victoria's deepening bias, and my parents' willful blindness were chipping away at that faith, piece by painful piece. Maya remained my anchor, her support the one constant I could rely on. She'd meticulously file my reports, double-check my work, and quietly remind me that I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. Still, I felt the walls closing in. My sister's ambition and her boyfriend's parasitic opportunism weren't just professional hurdles anymore. They were existential threats. I had built this empire brick by digital brick, but I was rapidly losing my place in it. The moment Victoria handed Leo my flagship supply chain project, I felt a physical sickness in my stomach. I had dedicated years to perfecting Vance Couture's logistics, a complex ballet of code and real-world coordination that ensured every single garment reached our customers on time. Now, my sister, willfully blind to my expertise, had just given her unqualified boyfriend the reins to my life's work. The project was my masterpiece, a comprehensive blueprint for the company's future. Every shipping route, every warehouse protocol, every delivery schedule had been meticulously mapped out to save us millions and scale efficiently. I had shared it with her in a private meeting, expecting it to be a collaborative effort. Instead, she'd tossed it to him like a shiny new toy. A few weeks later, Leo strutted into the boardroom for the quarterly review, ready to present my plan as his own creation. "I've streamlined our entire supply chain," he declared, flashing that insufferable winning grin. The slides he presented were filled with my data, my projections, my carefully crafted phrases. Victoria, seated at the head of the table, beamed with pride and started the applause. My parents, Eleanor and Richard, eagerly followed suit, their clapping echoing like hammer blows in the suddenly silent room. "Brilliant work, son," my father said, his eyes gleaming with admiration for Leo. I sat there, frozen, the copy of my original report in my hands, feeling as useless as a stone. My sister didn't even glance in my direction. The board members nodded, impressed, while a white-hot fury burned inside me. He had stolen my work, my intellect, and they were lapping it up. I couldn't stay silent. "Those are my strategies," I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the self-congratulatory atmosphere. "I designed every single step of that plan." The room stilled. Leo's plastic smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered with infuriating speed. "Alex helped with some of the finer details, of course," he lied, patting my contribution on the head like a child's drawing. Victoria immediately cut in, her tone sharp and final. "This isn't about who gets the credit, Alex. It's about results." Her loyalty was no longer a question, it was a declaration. My mother leaned forward, her face a mask of disapproval. "You need to learn to cooperate, not compete," she scolded. My father nodded in stern agreement. "Support the team, Alex." I opened my mouth to argue to show them the proof in my hands, but their combined stares were a brick wall. My objection was dismissed. My role was being actively erased. After the meeting, I paced my office like a caged animal, their words replaying in my head. Maya slipped in, her face tense with concern. "He's angling for more, Alex," she whispered, closing the door behind her. "I overheard him talking to Victoria about leading all major projects from now on." Her warning landed like a punch to the gut. Leo wasn't just stealing credit for past work. He was actively positioning himself to usurp my entire future at the company. I had built the very system that made us competitive, and he was turning it into his personal stepping stone to power. Maya's loyalty was a small comfort, but a dark question began to form in my mind. Was Victoria a willing accomplice in this, or was she just hopelessly naive? Her unquestioning trust in him felt like a profound betrayal. I started digging into Leo's implementation of my plan, searching for the flaws I knew I'd find. His version was a sloppy, rushed imitation. He'd rerouted shipments through congested hubs, understaffed our key warehouses, and promised delivery times that were logistically impossible. I had warned Victoria about these exact risks, but she had dismissed them as me being overly cautious. Now, the first wave of customer complaints was rolling in, and order tracking was showing significant delays. I compiled a new urgent report, highlighting every error, every corner he'd cut, and sent it directly to her and our parents. Her reply was a single, curt sentence. "Leo is handling it." No discussion, no acknowledgement of the impending disaster, no gratitude for my vigilance. My parents backed her up, as always. "Trust your sister's judgment, Alex," my mother said over a tense family dinner, her tone dripping with dismissal. My father chimed in, "The boy has vision. You could learn from him." Their words stung more than they could ever know, a confirmation that their faith in me was completely non-existent. Maya was the only thing keeping me sane. She pulled server data and shipping manifests, providing concrete proof that my original plan was flawless. "Your projections were perfect," she said, showing me the side-by-side comparison on her monitor. "He's cutting corners to make his initial numbers look good, but it's going to collapse." Her evidence was irrefutable, but Victoria refused to even look at it. I finally confronted my sister in her office, laying out printouts of the shipping delays and the rising tide of customer complaints. "These are Leo's mistakes," I said, pointing to the damning numbers. She barely looked up from her screen. "Stop trying to undermine him," she snapped, her voice cold. "We are a family business. Start acting like it." Her words weren't just a rebuke. They were a wall she was building between us. She wasn't leading a company. She was protecting her boyfriend at its expense. That night, I couldn't sleep. Leo's ambition was no longer a suspicion. It was a clear and present danger. His charm was nothing but a mask for his ruthless opportunism. He wasn't just taking credit. He was systematically rewriting my place in the history and future of Vance Couture. Maya's warning echoed in my mind. He wanted total control, and Victoria was just handing it to him. My sister's loyalty, something I had once taken for granted, now felt like a sick joke. Had she known all along that he would steal my work? Was she actively choosing him over me? I had trusted her to value our shared dream, but her actions screamed that her only priority was him. My parents' blind support only deepened the wound. They saw her as the star and me as the disposable stagehand. I started watching Leo with a new clinical focus, tracking his every move. He'd pitch ideas in meetings, each one a parasitic attachment to my core systems, yet he never once mentioned my name. Victoria's praise for him grew more and more lavish. The board, swayed by her unshakable confidence, approved his reckless proposals. My parents, dazzled by his empty promises, continued to push me to step up and be more like him. Step up? I had built the very foundation they were all standing on. Maya caught me after one particularly galling meeting, her voice low and firm. "He's not going to stop, Alex. You need to protect what's yours." Her words were no longer just friendly advice. They were a wake-up call. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Leo wasn't a colleague. He was a predator. His rise wasn't about ego, it was a calculated power grab. And Victoria's refusal to see it, her active participation in it, made her complicit. I had poured my soul into Vance Couture, but my sister's infatuation was dismantling my entire career. I wasn't just fighting for credit anymore. I was fighting for my professional survival. My doubt hardened into a cold, sharp clarity. I couldn't trust any of them anymore. Our family business was fracturing, and I was being pushed to the outside. Leo's flashy new online campaign was a catastrophe waiting to happen. He had pitched it to the board as Vance Couture's ticket to utterly dominate the Meridian retail market, promising record-breaking sales and unprecedented brand exposure. My sister Victoria bought every single word, greenlighting his entire plan despite my strenuous, data-backed warnings. I'd crunched the numbers relentlessly. His projections were not just optimistic, they were reckless, completely ignoring our warehouse capacity limits and the very real constraints of our shipping network. Victoria brushed me off. Her trust in her boyfriend was absolute, a fortress I could not breach. The campaign launched with a massive media blitz. Ads flooded every social media platform, and influencer collaborations went live. Just as he'd predicted, customers swarmed our website. Orders piled up at an astronomical rate, and then, just as I'd predicted, the system buckled under the strain. Our warehouses overflowed within hours, shipments stalled on the docks, and a tsunami of angry customer complaints flooded my department's inbox. Leo had grossly underestimated the logistical demand, leaving us critically short on staff and storage space. Our biggest clients, the chain stores that relied on our reputation for punctuality and reliability, began sending threatening emails, hinting at pulling their multi-million-dollar contracts. I was running on fumes powered by black coffee and pure adrenaline. Maya, my incredible assistant, stayed by my side through it all, rerouting emergency deliveries and personally soothing furious corporate buyers on the phone. We worked around the clock, juggling complex spreadsheets and an endless stream of calls, just to keep the chaos from spiraling into total corporate collapse. My system, the one I had built from nothing, was our only lifeline. Its automated fail-safes and inventory balancing algorithms were the only things holding back a complete operational meltdown. Victoria, of course, didn't notice any of this. She was far too busy praising Leo's vision in glowing press releases. He was giving interviews, spinning the disastrous campaign as a bold, unqualified success, completely oblivious to the raging fire I was desperately trying to extinguish behind the scenes. Somehow, Maya and I managed to stabilize the warehouses. We rerouted mountains of stock to fulfill the priority orders, saving our key accounts from jumping ship. But the cost was brutal. Over time, pay went through the roof, and dozens of our smaller, loyal clients walked away, disgusted by the broken promises. I sent Victoria a detailed report outlining the damage control we'd executed and the significant financial losses incurred. Her response was a single, infuriating line of text: "Handle it, Alex." There was no gratitude, no acknowledgement of the disaster I had averted. My parents were even worse. Over a tense family dinner that weekend, they tore into me. "Why didn't you manage the inventory better, Alexandra?" my mother demanded, her fork jabbing the air for emphasis. My father piled on, his face grim. "This is on you, Alex. It's a failure of leadership." I stared at them, completely incredulous. I had just saved their precious company from the brink, while Leo's epic blunder had nearly sunk the entire ship. Maya's quiet, steady presence at the office was the only thing that kept me grounded. "We pulled it off," she said one night, handing me a revised shipping log that showed we were finally back on track. "But they're completely blind to it." Her words fueled the fire of my frustration. The real breaking point came late one evening. I was in my office long after everyone else had gone home, performing a deep diagnostic on the online ordering system. I was tweaking the algorithms, building in new safeguards to prevent another overload like the one Leo had caused. Buried deep within the original source code, in a folder I hadn't looked at in years, I stumbled across a file. It was a digital tripwire, a confidentiality and intellectual property agreement I had embedded into the system's core when I first built it. It was a safeguard, designed for a worst-case scenario I never truly believed would happen. The clause was simple and clear. If I were ever wrongfully terminated or suspended without just cause, I retained the legal right to lock all administrative access to the platform, effectively halting all company operations. My heart began to race. This wasn't just a technicality buried in legalese. This was power, real power. I kept it to myself. The secret was a tiny flickering flame of hope in the suffocating haze of my exhaustion and anger. The very next day, Victoria called an all-hands staff meeting, with Leo standing proudly at her side. They stood before the entire team, touting the campaign's record-breaking order numbers. There was not a single word about the near catastrophe, the financial hemorrhaging, or the heroic efforts of my team to fix it. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would crack. Maya shot me a look, a silent plea to stay calm. My sister's speech was a sickening tribute to Leo's brilliant leadership, her pride in him nauseatingly palpable. Mom and Dad, seated in the front row like royalty, nodded along with every word. I felt completely invisible. My work, my contributions, my very existence had been erased once again. When I tried to raise the issue of the significant client losses we'd suffered, Victoria cut me off sharply. "Focus on solutions, not problems, Alex," she snapped. The room moved on and my voice was drowned out. Maya pulled me aside as soon as the meeting ended. "They're rewriting the narrative," she said, her tone urgent and low. "You saved this company, but they're giving him the crown for it." Her words stung, but the discovery of that hidden clause burned brighter. I didn't tell her about it, not yet. The clause was my leverage, a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I buried my simmering excitement, forcing myself to focus on the daily grind. Leo's mistakes kept piling up, and his next harebrained proposal was already on Victoria's desk. I warned her again, citing hard data on our current staffing shortages and warehouse backlogs. She ignored me, her faith in him unshaken. My parents' criticism didn't let up. At the office, my father cornered me by the elevators. "You're not pulling your weight, Alex," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Leo is carrying this team." I bit back the retort that burned in my throat. The contract's existence was a silent shield. Maya noticed the subtle shift in my demeanor, her eyes narrowing. "You're planning something," she said, more a statement than a question. I dodged, not ready to share my ace in the hole. The clause wasn't a plan yet. It was just a possibility, a loaded gun waiting to be picked up. I kept working, ensuring the system ran perfectly, my secret locked away. The fallout from the campaign lingered. Our smaller clients didn't return, and staff morale plummeted. I fielded their complaints, promising better processes I knew I wouldn't be allowed to implement. Maya and I streamlined operations where we could, quietly cutting losses. Victoria didn't care. She was busy planning the lavish year-end party, another stage for Leo to shine. My parents, dazzled by her confidence, continued to push me to support the family. Support them? I had carried them through the storm they had created. That contract clause stayed in the front of my mind, a quiet, insistent promise. I wasn't just saving Vance Couture anymore. I was preparing to protect myself. The festive lights of the year-end party did nothing to hide the palpable tension in the air. The grand ballroom at Vance Couture's Meridian headquarters buzzed with over 200 employees, their forced chatter a thin veneer over the undercurrent of corporate unease. I stood near the bar, nursing a club soda, my stomach tight with a sense of impending doom. Victoria, my sister, had been cold and distant all week, with her boyfriend Leo practically glued to her side. The fallout from his disastrous campaign still lingered. Our warehouses were just barely recovered, and our clients were still wary, yet the two of them acted completely untouchable. My parents mingled through the crowd, their smiles reserved exclusively for her and her partner, never for me. Maya, my loyal assistant, caught my eye from across the room, her small, steady nod, a silent reassurance. Then Victoria took the stage, her voice commanding the room into silence. "Tonight we celebrate our resilience," she began, immediately launching into a glowing tribute to Leo's bold leadership. The crowd offered a polite round of applause, but I felt the room begin to spin. His campaign had nearly ruined us, and I was the one who had saved the day. She didn't mention me once. Instead, she turned her gaze, her eyes locking onto mine with unnerving intensity. "Alex, please step forward," she said, her tone as sharp as a blade. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I walked toward the stage, every step feeling impossibly heavy. I knew this wasn't going to be praise. She didn't waste a single moment. "You criticize Leo's campaign, undermining our team and our vision," she accused, her voice amplified by the microphone. "I want you to apologize to him, publicly, now." The room went dead silent. Leo stood beside her, smirking, his confidence utterly unshaken. I stared at her, incredulous. "Apologize?" I said, my own voice surprisingly clear and strong. His miscalculations overloaded our entire infrastructure, cost us valuable clients, and nearly sank the company. I was the one who fixed it. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Victoria's face flushed a deep, angry red, her carefully constructed composure slipping. "You are out of line," she snapped. "Say you're sorry or you're done here." I held her stare, the immense weight of every betrayal, her blatant bias, his shameless theft, our parents' cold dismissal, crashing down on me in that one awful moment. "I won't," I said, my voice unflinching. Her eyes blazed with fury. "You're suspended, effective immediately," she declared, her words slicing through the room. My parents, standing nearby, actually laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Know your place," they said in unison, their voices dripping with a final ugly disdain. The crowd erupted. Some were cheering her on, others whispering in shock. Leo's smirk widened into a triumphant grin. My sister's chin lifted, victorious. I felt the full force of their scorn, but I wasn't broken. "Fine," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the noise. The single word hung in the air, a promise they were too arrogant to understand. I turned and walked off the stage, the crowd parting as I moved. Their laughter followed me, but I kept my head held high. I had personally built the system that was the lifeblood of Vance Couture, and I held the only key. The confidentiality agreement, buried deep in my own code, was my leverage. Victoria thought she had finally won, but she had just lit the fuse. Outside, the cool night air hit me, sharp and clean. I pulled out my phone and sent a short text to Maya. "Meet me tomorrow, 6 a.m., the usual spot. It's time." Her reply was almost instantaneous. "I'm with you." My assistant's loyalty was my anchor, her trust a lifeline in the storm. I didn't spell out the plan, not yet. The clause I had discovered gave me the legal right to lock the entire ordering system if I was wrongfully terminated or suspended. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Victoria's power grab, Leo's opportunism, and my parents' cruel betrayal had pushed me too far. The system would crumble to dust without me, and they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Back inside, the party roared on, oblivious to the hurricane that was brewing. I didn't look back. My sister's public humiliation was designed to break me, but it had only sharpened my resolve. My parents' words, "Know your place," echoed in my mind, fueling the fire within me. They saw me as an expendable cog in their grand machine, but I was the engine, and I was about to prove it. Maya's role was now crucial. Her access to the system's back-end servers made her my only true ally. I trusted her implicitly to keep my secret and to help me prepare for what came next. The clause wasn't just a technicality, it was my way out. A contingency I had wisely built years ago as a safeguard against this very kind of betrayal. Victoria's rash decision to suspend me played right into my hands. Wrongful suspension without cause. She had personally handed me the trigger, but I wouldn't act rashly. I needed Maya's help to ensure every step was clean, legal, and untraceable. The system's collapse would hit them hard and fast. Orders would freeze, clients would be lost, and revenue would flatline. They would come begging me to fix it, and this time, I would be ready with my terms. As I drove home, my mind raced, replaying the scene. The mocking laughter, Victoria's furious face, Leo's smug grin. They all thought they had finally crushed me. They were so wrong. I had spent years pouring my soul into Vance Couture, into every line of code and every delivery route. They had taken it all for granted and tried to erase my worth. Now, I held the power to remind them of it. My phone buzzed again with another message from Maya. "Tomorrow, 6 a.m., I'll bring the coffee." I smiled. The first genuine spark of hope I'd felt in weeks. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Sunrise brought absolute chaos to Vance Couture. Just as I'd planned, orders froze on every computer screen across the company. The online system, the digital backbone of our Meridian retail empire, was completely dead. Warehouses fell silent, deliveries stalled, and a tidal wave of customer complaints flooded the phone lines. Employees scrambled in a panic, their frantic energy palpable even through the updates I was receiving. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand. I was at home, calmly sipping coffee, my phone buzzing with a constant stream of texts from Maya. My assistant had met me at dawn, her laptop open on the cafe table between us, as we confirmed the confidentiality clause was active and the system was securely locked. Frank Harris, our head of IT, was the first to sound the alarm. According to Maya's texts, he burst into Victoria's office, his voice shaking. "The platform is completely down, I can't get in," he reported, sweat beading on his forehead. My sister, normally the picture of cool composure, went pale. She immediately turned to Leo, her boyfriend, expecting him to have some magical answer. He just fumbled, his usual charm utterly useless against a total technical blackout. "Did you try rebooting it?" he stammered, proving his cluelessness once again. Frank just shook his head. "It's not a server glitch, it's locked. Someone with the highest level admin access did this deliberately." Victoria's eyes narrowed, but she didn't say my name. Not yet. The office descended into pure disorder. Staff huddled around dark monitors, refreshing screens in vain. New orders piled up in a digital limbo, representing millions in stalled revenue. Our biggest clients, already shaken by Leo's failed campaign, began sending emails threatening to walk for good. That's when Eleanor and Richard, my parents, stormed in, their usual air of superiority replaced by raw fury. "Fix this now," my mother shouted at Frank, who threw his hands up in defeat. "I don't have the keys to this kingdom," he said, exasperated. "Only 2 people ever did." My father then turned on Victoria. "You're the CEO, do something!" She snapped back, deflecting the blame onto Leo's lack of oversight. Their bickering echoed through the open plan office, the first real crack in their united front I had ever witnessed. Maya texted me from a quiet corner. "They're losing it. No one suspects you yet. They think it's an external hack." I smiled, my resolve as solid as steel. The clause I had embedded years ago, my secret safeguard against betrayal, was working perfectly. It allowed me to legally lock the system in the event of wrongful termination, a move that was completely airtight. I had activated it remotely right after the party, with Maya expertly covering my digital tracks. Her loyalty was unshakable, and her technical skills ensured no one could trace the shutdown back to us. Victoria called an emergency board meeting, her voice tight with panic over the speakerphone. Leo sat beside her, silent and useless, his earlier bravado completely gone. Frank reported no progress. His team was locked out of every database and server. My parents, their faces red with anger, demanded answers. "Who has the highest admin access?" my father barked. Frank hesitated for a moment. Historically? Only Alex and her assistant, Maya. The room went still. Victoria's jaw clenched. She knew. Leo, in a pathetic attempt to deflect, suggested weakly, "Maybe it's a corporate hacker." But no one was buying it. The truth was closing in on them. Beulah Carter, our sharp and no-nonsense company lawyer, was summoned. She arrived with a heavy briefcase, her expression unreadable. Victoria thrust the system's original technical documentation at her, demanding she find a legal workaround. Beulah skimmed the pages, her expression slowly turning grim. "There's a specific confidentiality and IP clause here," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Alex embedded it when she first built the platform. It states that if she is wrongfully terminated or suspended, she retains the right to legally lock all access." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Suspension without documented cause, especially in a public forum, absolutely qualifies. Victoria stared, her disbelief curdling into pure rage. "She planned this," she hissed. Beulah gave a slight nod. "And it's ironclad. Legally, she's well within her rights." The panic in the room turned to sheer desperation. Victoria grabbed her phone and dialed my number. I let it ring 3 times, savoring the sound. When I finally answered, her tone was a volatile mix of fury and pleading. "Alex, unlock the system," she demanded. "You're killing the company." I remained perfectly calm, my voice even. "I'll consider it," I said coolly. "Set up a full board meeting for tomorrow morning. We can discuss potential solutions then." She sputtered, completely unaccustomed to being on the losing end of a negotiation. "This is blackmail," she shouted into the phone. I didn't flinch. "No, Victoria," I replied, just before hanging up. "It's business." Maya's next text confirmed it. Board meeting scheduled, 9 a.m. tomorrow. The office remained paralyzed. Furious customers were lighting up social media, and the company's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Unpaid suppliers halted their shipments. Leo, scrambling to save face, pitched a series of temporary manual fixes. Paper logs, phone orders. They all failed spectacularly, leaving the staff even more overwhelmed and demoralized. My parents' blame game intensified. "You trusted him." My mother accused my father, pointing a trembling finger at Leo. "You're the one who pushed her out," my father shot back, glaring at Victoria. Their precious empire built on the back of my system was crumbling, and they had no one to turn to but me. Maya kept me updated with a steady stream of texts. "They're begging staff to stay calm, but it's pure chaos. You should see them." I trusted her to remain discreet. Her role in the shutdown was our secret. Beulah's legal confirmation of the clause was my shield. No one could touch me. Victoria's desperate call had been her first surrender, but I was far from done. The board meeting would be my stage, my chance to reclaim everything they had tried to take from me. I had built the foundation of Vance Couture, and tomorrow they would finally learn its true cost. As night fell, the crisis deepened. The company's stock was plummeting in after-hours trading. Victoria, Leo, and my parents were trapped in a prison of their own making, their arrogance shattered. I sat at my home office desk reviewing the clause's details one last time, preparing my list of terms. Maya's final message of the night came through. "They're terrified, Alex. You've got them." I nodded to myself, my path crystal clear. The boardroom would decide everything, and for the first time in my life, I held all the keys. I stepped into the boardroom with a profound sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. The air in the room was thick with tension, the long mahogany table surrounded by pale, anxious faces. Victoria, my sister, sat at the head, her eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Leo, her now toxic boyfriend, slumped in the chair beside her, his usual swagger completely gone. My parents, Eleanor and Richard, their confidence shattered, actively avoided my gaze. Emmett Sterling and Ada Guyon, 2 senior board members who had quietly expressed their frustrations with Victoria's leadership to me in the past, gave me subtle, encouraging nods as I entered. Maya stood by the door, her presence a silent, steady anchor. The system lockdown had brought Vance Couture to its knees, and I held its fate in my hands. Victoria spoke first, her voice strained and raspy. "Unlock the system, Alex," she demanded, clutching a thick stack of complaints from our top clients. "You've made your point." I leaned back in my chair, my expression unreadable. "My point," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the silence, "is that I built this company's foundation from scratch, and you threw me out like I was nothing." Her jaw tightened, but for once she had no reply. Leo shifted uncomfortably, muttering, "This is sabotage." I ignored him completely, turning my attention to the board. "I have terms," I stated. Emmett, a sharp-eyed veteran of the retail world, leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Let's hear them," he said, his tone neutral but curious. Ada, a brilliant financial strategist, nodded, her pen poised over a notepad. They had grown tired of Victoria's blatant favoritism and Leo's string of costly failures. I laid out my demands, each one a carefully placed stone. First, Leo is out, fired, effective immediately. His incompetence has cost this company millions. The room froze. Leo's face turned a blotchy red. "You can't do that," he sputtered. Emmett raised a hand, his voice firm. "The board can," he said, his gaze fixed on Victoria. My sister's hands were shaking. "He's an asset," she insisted, but her voice wavered, devoid of its usual conviction. I pressed on without missing a beat. "Second, Victoria steps down as CEO. She can remain as an advisor, but with no voting power and no operational control." Gasps echoed around the table. My mother shot to her feet, her voice shrill. "You're destroying this family!" My father joined her. "This is our legacy, Alexandra." I met their furious stares without flinching. "You chose him over me," I said calmly. "You stood by and watched as my work was stolen and my name was erased. Now I'm saving what I built." Ada was scribbling notes furiously, her expression unreadable, but intensely focused. Leo tried to interrupt, his voice desperate. "I brought innovation to this company." I cut him off, sliding a thick folder across the polished table toward Emmett. "Your campaign lost us our 3 biggest clients and resulted in a 40% increase in overtime costs," I said, pointing to the damning data Maya had compiled. "You stole my plans, you botched the execution, and you took all the credit." Emmett skimmed the report, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. Ada's pen stopped moving. Victoria's face finally crumpled, her last defense of Leo collapsing under the undeniable weight of evidence. Just then, Beulah Carter, our lawyer, entered, holding a copy of the contract. "Ms. Vance's lockout is entirely legal," she confirmed, her tone matter-of-fact. "The wrongful suspension clause was clearly triggered. The board can choose to reinstate her and meet her terms, or it can face ongoing catastrophic losses." Victoria's eyes darted to Mom and Dad, pleading for support, but they were silent, their earlier bravado completely gone. Emmett finally spoke, his voice resonating with authority. "We've reviewed the financials from the past 48 hours. The company is bleeding money. Alex's system is irreplaceable." Ada nodded in agreement. "Her terms are not only reasonable, they're necessary, given the gross mismanagement we've witnessed." The vote was swift and brutal. Emmett and Ada raised their hands in favor of my demands, easily outnumbering Victoria's few remaining allies on the board. Leo was officially fired. Beulah handed him his termination letter right there at the table. He stood, his face a twisted mask of rage and humiliation, and stormed out of the room, slamming the heavy door behind him. Victoria sank into her chair, tears of defeat streaming down her face. Her reign over Vance Couture was over. "You've ruined everything," she whispered, but I felt no pity. She had chosen him over me, over the company, over our family. My parents sat there powerless, watching their legacy slip through their fingers. "How could you do this to us?" my mother choked out. I held her gaze, my voice steady. "You told me to know my place," I said. "This is it." My father simply looked away, his silence a stark admission of his defeat. The board quickly moved to my final demand, a clear path to new leadership. Emmett proposed a new interim management team with me overseeing the entire transition. "You've more than proven your value, Alex," he said. Ada agreed. "The company needs your stability right now." I accepted, but with one final condition. I would step back completely once the new permanent CEO was in place. The system was unlocked within the hour and orders began flowing again. I immediately appointed Maya to lead the interim tech team, her loyalty finally rewarded with the authority she deserved. The board approved my choice for a new CEO, a seasoned outsider untainted by our family's drama. Victoria, now a powerless advisor, left the room without another word, her spirit broken. My parents followed, their influence in the company they founded utterly erased. The company I had poured my soul into was finally safe, but it no longer felt like home. As I walked through the office later that day, employees whispered. Some nodded in respect, others looked at me with wary eyes. Maya caught up to me, her own eyes bright with tears of relief. "You did it, Alex," she said, her voice low. I managed a faint smile. "We did it," I corrected. The victory was mine, but it felt hollow. I had reclaimed my worth, but the price was my family. I began preparing my exit, my role at Vance Couture complete. The future was a blank page, mine to write, finally free from their long and suffocating shadow. Walking away from my family was the single most difficult choice I have ever made. After that boardroom showdown, I cut all ties. No more calls to Victoria, no more tense dinners with Mom and Dad. I ignored their letters, their voicemails, their attempts at apologies. Their betrayal, the years of dismissing my worth, of favoring my sister's incompetent boyfriend, of actively erasing my contributions, had carved scars too deep to ever truly heal. I left Vance Couture behind, watching from a distance as its new management thrived without their toxic interference. My future lay elsewhere, and I was ready to build it on my own terms. I partnered with Marcus Thorne, a seasoned entrepreneur I'd met through industry contacts. His sharp business mind and access to capital were the perfect complement to my operational vision. Together, we launched Aura Luxe, a high-end sustainable fashion brand targeting Meridian's most discerning clientele. Within 3 months, we had secured a sleek downtown office, hired a small, brilliant team, and debuted our first collection. Our designs, bold, exclusive, and ethically sourced, created an immediate buzz, pulling clients directly from Vance Couture's now stagnant base. Marcus handled the investors while I led operations, my skills in system building sharper and more innovative than ever. Aura Luxe wasn't just a company, it was my redemption. Healing, I learned, was not a linear process. The weight of my family's rejection lingered in quiet moments, but I found solace in my friendship with Daniel Cox, a close friend whose steady, unwavering presence grounded me. His quiet humor and our late-night talks about everything and nothing helped me rediscover a sense of joy I thought I had lost forever. We explored Meridian's sprawling desert trails, our conversations weaving together new dreams of a life unbound by the pain of the past. Daniel never pushed, but his simple, honest belief in me helped spark something new inside me, a fragile but very real happiness. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding myself piece by painful piece. Victoria's fall from grace was stark and swift. As a nominal advisor at Vance Couture, she wielded zero power, her opinions ignored in meetings she was barely invited to. Colleagues who had once fawned over her now sidestepped her in the hallways, their whispers cold and dismissive. Her blind loyalty to Leo had cost her all her credibility, and the industry has a long memory. She slowly faded into irrelevance, a ghost of the powerful CEO she had once been. Leo fared even worse. His reputation, built entirely on stolen ideas and botched campaigns, crumbled to dust. No respectable firm in Meridian or beyond would touch him. His endless applications were met with a wall of silence. He drifted, becoming a cautionary tale of ambition without substance. My parents retreated into a self-imposed isolation. Their empire, once their proud family legacy, was now running efficiently without them. I heard through Maya, who had become a dear friend, that they lived quietly, their days marked by a heavy, silent regret. They sent letters still pleading for a forgiveness I was not ready to give. Their words, "Know your place," still stung, a permanent reminder of the moment they chose to side against their own daughter. They had lost me, and no apology could ever undo that. Aura Luxe, meanwhile, continued to grow. Our second collection sold out in pre-orders, and major national retailers began to take notice. Marcus and I started planning our expansion, eyeing markets far beyond Arizona. Maya eventually joined us, her tech expertise invaluable in shaping our new, state-of-the-art online platform. She thrived, finally free from the chaos and toxicity of Vance Couture. Daniel, ever supportive, celebrated every single milestone with me, his pride in my accomplishments a warm and steady light. I found myself standing taller, my confidence no longer tied to my family's conditional approval. Looking back, I could finally see the true cost of their betrayal and the incredible strength it had forged within me. I had built Vance Couture from the ground up, only to watch them twist it with their greed and insecurity. Leaving wasn't an act of escape, it was an act of liberation. I had learned to trust my own worth, to stand firm against those who would seek to diminish me. The industry respected me now, not as a Vance, but as Alex, the woman who had turned her deepest pain into her greatest power. My story carries a truth that I want to share with anyone who will listen. Your independence is hard-won, but it is worth everything. Do not compromise your value for those who betray you. Believe in what you bring to the table, even when, especially when, others do not. I walked away from a hollow legacy to build my own, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. The scars are still there, but now they only serve to remind me of who I am, a woman who chose herself and never ever looked back.